Well, I think the way we're going to proceed this evening is to have our panelists speak for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then allow them to ask questions of one another, but at the same time open it up to questions from the audience so we can begin with a conversation. Why don't we begin with Professor Ahmida, if that's possible.
Thank you for inviting me again to Columbia University. I'm delighted to be here with you. I was here with Yussef, thanks to Yussef's energy and organizing a while ago, not far away. And it was a very, very interesting and enriching experience, leaving the countryside and coming to the big city. I feel like when I left Libya to go to Cairo a while ago, and it looks like I keep coming to cities. Let me see, since we have just short time, I would like to just share with you a few ideas how, what I would like to do is to suggest how to think about the current crisis, more than maybe the details of what goes on, because as we know, it's a fluid situation, and the uprising is going, and the regime refused to give up to the demands. So what I would like to do is to share with you some maybe way of thinking about the Libyan uprising within the larger context of the people uprising in Tunisia, Egypt, and maybe the rest of the Arab world. Hopefully more to come, inshallah. The first point I would like to make is to bring attention to the fact we should avoid some obstacles that might hinder our understanding of the situation now. In the case of Libya, there are two pitfalls, I think, or filters that being brought by pundits and also by coverage and some so-called experts in the commentaries on the crisis. The first one is to focus solely on the leader, Gaddafi himself, as really the source of all trouble, but without really context, social and historical context of Libyan society and the forces that brought his regime to power, and why the regime decayed and ran out of steam and became so isolated in the face of Libyan people. The second obstacle, in my opinion, would be the ideology of tribalism. I hear it all the time, and for somebody who is specialist in this, in social history, I get very, very mad, and sometimes I get I laugh. Because what it does, it mystifies the whole thing. It brings images of pre-modern or anti-modern society that's led by despot, and really it gives you a sense of comfort. It doesn't explain much, get you confused. What it does, it covers lack of knowledge. And one thing you don't know, and you say, really, I don't know much about society. Another thing is to say, okay, oh, it's all tribal. So the ideology of tribalism, which is rooted in African studies in the past, and what goes on today, is really also another obstacle. What I'm trying to say simply is, if we want to make sense of the current democratic uprising, then we have to understand, to bring Libyan society in, and to bring Libyan social history in. And that's not going to be easy, because this is a small country, but very, very complex, and had a very rich, tragic history in the 20th century. Then moving to the how to think about the uprising, the democratic uprising now. I would say there are a number of variables I would like to share with you. The first is to understand is what are the sources of the crisis of the state, the Libyan state? Second is what are the sources of alienation, elite alienation? Third will be how people are mobilizing, sources of mobilization. And the final point will be the ongoing struggle for democratic rights and democratic representative Libya in the future. Is it really feasible? Is that going to happen in the short term or in the long term? Or is Libya going to become forced to become another Somalia or, God forbid, another Iraq? What are the scenarios for the future based on that? The first, if you want to apply this analytical framework and go beyond the persona of Gaddafi and the fixation on Gaddafi, which is, I think, is a hindrance more than a way of analyzing and understanding the dynamics of state-society relations in Libya, we have to say the first source of this crisis would be the loss of nationals' credentials. And I have in mind the disastrous war in Chad in the middle 80s, and the fact that the regime did not even recognize the defeat. And we're talking about a Libyan death between 5,000 to 10,000, according to all estimates. And to this day, there is no recognition of this. And this earthquake is, has been so horrendous in Libyan society. Many died, many lost, many don't know what happened to them. And worse, the trauma of not even recognizing the war is really huge. That war, in my opinion, was the beginning of the larger crisis that haunted the regime. The disaster of Lockerbie, where Libyan society had to pay from its own wealth over $20 billion, and the regime managed to handle that very well, led by reformist groups within the regime. But at the same time, no admission, no apology to the Libyan people, no consultation, that further created, sharpened the crisis of the regime. The other sources of alienation, now moving from the state crisis, would be the attack on the opposition. I'm talking about ulama, merchants, liberal writers and poets and novelists and journalists, and also socialists and Islamists. Basically, no opposition was tolerated, and political parties were banned, and any organization would be treason. That was a major source of alienation of especially the elite. Exclusion of different regions, especially the eastern region, has been marginalized, and the south too. I mean, even though Gaddafi came from the south, but the south and the eastern region have been really marginalized very much. The corruption, widespread. I'm sure that many of you saw or read about WikiLeaks, and also the parties that cost millions, bringing Beyonce and Mariah Carey and others, where Libyans have to live, most Libyan, on $300 in one of the richest countries in the whole continent. So you're talking about contradictions, but also you're talking about the falling of the public institutions, even education and health system. Most Libyans go to neighboring countries for treatment. Also the massacre of 1996 in Busim that Yussef mentioned. I think one of the it's haunted the regime. Actually, the whole uprising started because of the families and the lawyers and the civil rights activists who are trying to revive that thing. They make the state accountable for that. And I would say also another source of alienation would be the fact that Libyan people were very patient, and they tried to listen to Saif al-Islam at the beginning, thinking that the regime would reform itself. Nobody would go to the streets easily. This is very, very universal thing. And when the reform attempts failed and turned to be just venting or a cosmetic ploy by the regime, and add to that the disastrous speeches by Gaddafi and his son in reacting to the Tunisian uprising, that really convinced not only the one who were alienated, but vast majority of Libyans that this regime is not reformable. There's no way to reform it. Let's get rid of it. Now, let me move quickly. I know time is limited to the sources of mass mobilization. To add another variable, I would say that we have to look at indirect impact, like population increase. Libya has now, we think, 6.5 million people. We have urbanization, literacy rate, one of the highest in the whole continent of Africa. And also the social network, despite the banning of political parties and the weakening of some trade unions, we know that there has been revival in the last 10 years through blogs and also through email, websites, and also satellite TV that connected Libyans with the world in general and the region in general. And also the revival of the Writers' Union, which has been at the front of the Libyan struggle. I have been privileged to be part of a journal called Arajin Ferns that has been really trying to deepen analysis of the situation in Libya. And also, I remember, for example, the blog of my dear friend and one of the best Libyan critics, Ahmed al-Fitouri, Sri, that also, among others, have deepened the understanding and interaction beyond the state control. I would say also all of these institution and alternative source of exchanging and organizing led to sharpening the awareness of the pitfalls and the way to fight a very, very entrenched regime that refused to recognize any participation from the larger society. Also, the sharpening of contradiction between the rich and the poor further did that, added to that. Now, there are symbols beside the social, mobilization and institution, like fighting for the Constitution of 1951, declaring that the flag, the independence flag, is really a symbol of an alternative way of thinking. I think hopefully that will not be a romantic idea about going back to the monarchy, but also we should so far interpret it as a way of alternative way of mobilizing. The shape of revolutionary struggle now is really with us. There is a coalition that combines secular, liberal, and Islamist groups that are really among a new generation of lawyers, academics, doctors, civil rights activists, and also women activists as well, that are leading this challenge to, in a very courageous way, one of the most brutal regimes that you could face. And almost a shadow of God kind of personality represented by Colonel Gaddafi here. I think what we see now is this uprising did not happen because something, stupid speech here or there. I think we should look at the simmering sources of crisis, simmering causes of alienation, blocking any attempt to reform, where Libyans were very generous. And when everything was shot in their faces, when the reform was aborted, then people began to join others. And other sources, it's not just in Libya, people in Tunisia, people in Egypt, people outside began to support and interact with this coalition that's challenging this very, very exhausted authoritarian, dictatorial state that ran out of steam and exhausted the generous time that the people gave it over these years. I should maybe stop because I could go on and on forever. I come from a long genealogy of storytellers, so forgive me for taking long, and I'd be glad to elaborate and comment on other implications for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.